Welcome into quote unquote episode 1 of the Hogs on the Hill podcast, your go to podcast for in depth dive into all things Arkansas Razorbacks. Join us as we dissect the victories, analyze the plays, and revel in the spirit of the Hogs. Episode 1 is brought to you by Homefield. Step into the legacy of collegiate style with Homefield's premium vintage collegiate apparel. Embrace the spirit of your alma mater or your favorite team with our meticulously crafted, comfortable, and stylish collection. Elevate your game day attire and celebrate the rich history of college sports. Homefield, where tradition meets modern comfort in every stitch. You can check them out and use the promo code Variety Sports in all caps to receive 15% off that first order. So go check them out today. They got some fantastic stuff. I got just a brand new shirt in the mail the other day that I'm ready to debut at an Arkansas baseball game. They've got the pitching, the batting, ribbies. It's fantastic. So you can go check them out today and get that 15% off. And, there's a lot of action going on right now in the transfer portal. And Arkansas has been at the forefront of it. And when you look at football and basketball, both sports have been heavily involved in transfer portal things going on right now. And maybe some for the better, some for the worse. But we'll cover some guys that are leaving. But Arkansas has supplemented its roster with several guys that they are bringing in as well. So, it's hit or miss with the portal, and, you lose some guys you don't want to. You bring in some guys that you didn't think maybe you would get. So things like that. So as we jump in right here with football, you have several guys from Arkansas that are leaving. And, that latest football player that is leaving is defensive back R.J. Johnson. He was a redshirt freshman. He entered the portal. He was only in one game last season. He's a three-star prospect out of Georgia, and he's already found his new home as he is headed to Colorado to play for Coach Prime. Another one, Dominic Johnson, one that doesn't really surprise me, with just the depth that we have in our running back room. He's a guy that I really thought would be one if I had to pick to enter the transfer portal compared to Isaiah Gustav. He hasn't committed anywhere yet, so we'll see where he lands. Snacks Johnson was another surprising one for me, as he's a guy that, I think was slotted in to be a starter for this next upcoming season and be a leader on that defense. And then seems like out of nowhere, he decided to enter the transfer portal and he's headed back to Baylor, the team Arkansas took him from. So on this one's a surprising one for me. What's your thoughts on Snacks Johnson head back to Baylor?
Yeah, we touched on it just a little bit on our Razor Recap show. But to me, I was very surprised. The rest of these some of the names like Isaiah Gustav, Dominic Johnson, you hate to see those guys go, but at the same time, you understand there's a lot of mouths to feed in the running back room right now, especially with Braylon Russell coming in. He already looks like he's, ahead of the curve compared to what most freshmen are. And then transfer Jaquindon Jackson. And then obviously DeBinion's probably going to be the starter, or I don't know, it might be kind of a 50-50 split load between him and Jackson. I'm not sure. But that said, you've got like three guys right there that are probably going to hog up most of that playing time. And so I'm not surprised to see them enter. But Snacks Johnson, I felt like he was, at the end of the season, he was trying to recruit other guys to stay even. He was trying to get Jaheim Thomas to stay because he was planning on staying at the time. And so I think that's probably why I was as surprised as I am, is just with how high on the Hogs it felt like he was at the end of the regular season. To him, fast forward to now, enters the transfer portal, goes back to his original school, Baylor. Wish him nothing but the best there, but there has to have been some type of either falling out with the coaching staff, or maybe we've got better defensive backs than I'm thinking, on some of the guys that have come in. Maybe he didn't think he was going to get as much playing time as originally. I'm not sure. All things considered, like I said, it's a bit of a surprise. Hopefully the next man up, can fill those shoes. I thought he played pretty well last year. Had some games where, missed a few tackles, missed a few assignments, but had some huge plays for us as well. So I hate to see him go. Definitely the one that hurts the most so far as transfers in this kind of late round of transferring, if you will. Obviously, we lost quite a few guys at the end of the season, but this being later on in the year after the spring game, things like that, it's a little surprising for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's one of those things where it really makes you start to think about, the state of the program, if you will. Not
Could be
necessarily
good, could be bad. It's hard to know right now,
Yeah, and so one of those things, it makes you question some things, but hopefully, these guys are moving on because some other guys stepped up in a positive way. Another guy we'll talk about, offensive lineman Paris Patterson. He redshirted last season, entered the transfer portal. He's a former 3-star. Did not appear in games last year, so I think maybe he thought it's time to move on for himself. Max Fletcher, a guy that he's headed to, our punter, he's headed to Cincinnati, and it will join his brother. Offensive lineman Andrew Chambly, he's another guy that, was one of the first ones that entered the transfer portal. Kind of, it was a weird situation for him, the way Pittman came out and said he kind of lost his love for the game and is no longer with the team. And then he decided to enter the transfer portal, but not done yet. So that's a weird situation that kind of makes you think. And then another one that didn't really surprise me by the time we got to the spring game is Jacoby Criswell, as he's another guy that he's headed back to his former school in North Carolina. We didn't see him, I think as spring practice when he kept just dropping down that depth chart. We seen him in that last game last season against Missouri where he got most of his playing time, and that was in, basically garbage time. He was a former 4-star prospect from Morton, so he's an Arkansas kid, but we brought in Taylor Green. I think that was expected with a quarterback of his caliber coming in, that he wasn't coming in to compete or sit, for a year. So I think with Criswell, it had been his, I guess, third new offense that he would have had to learn, and maybe just wasn't picking up the Petrino offense like he wanted him to, and kind of as fell down that depth chart behind Malachi Singleton, KJ Jackson, a couple of redshirt freshmen and true freshmen that seem to be pretty talented in what Petrino's looking for.
Yeah, and the big thing for him, obviously he's going back to North Carolina where maybe he can kind of fit into the system a little quicker, obviously with knowing some of the things that go on there, and with potential, playing time available now compared to how it was these last couple of seasons with Drake May. I think that's right.
Yes, Drake May.
Anyways,
and Sam Howell
Drake,
before that.
Yeah. With Drake May there for a few years and Sam Howell there for a few years, playing time was hard to come by. Now maybe there's a little bit more open competition available at that quarterback position at North Carolina. And with him, kind of already understanding their scheme, their offense and stuff, and at least having a head start over, a different transfer, if you will, or an incoming freshman, maybe he thinks he can go over there and maybe earn some playing time, especially with kind of the way the writing was on the wall here for the U of A for him. So it sucks to lose a hometown kid like that in the way that it's kind of shaken out for him. But, I think it's probably a smart move on his own part, being able to go over there and maybe hit the ground running a little bit more than he was able to in the Petrino offense. So wish him nothing but the best. It just kind of didn't work out here,
In the end, who I blame for the bad luck for Jacoby Criswell? There's only one man to blame for this. And I think you know who I'm talking about.
Danny knows.
One Chad Morris.
Oh, gosh.
Because he did not recruit him out of high school. Instead, he decided to recruit his son instead of a 4-star prospect from in-state. So I think that's a lot to think on why he didn't have success at Arkansas and didn't end up at Arkansas to begin with.
That's fair.
So then final guy, Isaiah Gustav, one that really surprised me as well as, he looked good towards the end of the season last year. Thought he was kind of getting ready to burst onto the scene, if you will, especially with Rocket leaving. You had before Jaquindon Jackson, you thought, oh, you have Rashad Dominion, then you have Isaiah Gustav, a guy that, again, like Dominic Johnson, crowded running back room. I think it was kind of the writing was on the wall where the snaps were going to go. Hasn't declared anywhere yet. They're thinking he might end up at TCU with running backs coach that left here. Along that's what's rumored with Dominic Johnson too. That wouldn't be surprising at all. But as of now, he hasn't committed to anywhere yet. So that's the guys that are exiting Arkansas. Arkansas has a few guys that are coming in, and one of those guys is a quarterback that Arkansas is filling their vacant quarterback spot with in Blake Boda. He's coming over from Coastal Carolina. He appeared in 3 games for the Chancellors as a freshman in 23, completed 1 pass attempt for 14 yards against Texas State. So he's a guy that I think Petrino wanted to bring him in and potentially down the road, maybe have some competition. Not 100% sure with the success that we've seen out of Malachi Singleton and KJ Jackson in spring ball. We've got Taylor Green here for at least 1 year. Who knows, depending on how this season goes. He could decide to pursue the NFL, or he could come back for another year. Who knows at this point right now, with it just being finishing up spring ball. We don't know how the season's going to go, and that could be a whole different conversation by the time we get to this point next year.
Yeah, very true. It was an unexpected pickup, but not a bad one, in my opinion, just to have a little bit more depth back there. Can't forget about Austin Ledbetter either. So there's 5, maybe 6 guys kind of right now that, behind Taylor Green, it's not necessarily a toss-up. I think it's Malachi's job at number 2 is kind of my understanding so far, with KJ Jackson being pretty close behind him. And then, you've got these other guys kind of in the mix right there, though, with a lot of development and learning to be had to see, kind of who will step up to the next level. Because all these guys, every single one of them, even, Taylor included, are learning a new scheme, new players, new teammates, a lot of them at least, with Singleton probably kind of being your main exception there, where maybe he's got at least a little bit of chemistry with some of the wide receiver core, but pretty much everybody else is at least new to the team this year. So lot of growth and learning to be done. And having one more guy in there to kind of help the competition process is not a bad thing.
Yeah, so true. And then another guy I'm excited that we are definitely getting that in, that is a position that was much needed, is linebacker Steven Dix. He's a former Marshall Thundering Herd linebacker. He committed to Arkansas on April 30th. Last season for the Thundering Herd, he had 67 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hurries, 1 pass breakup, and 1 recovered fumble. And he had transferred to Marshall from Florida State, where he played in 21 games between 2020 and 2021. He missed 2022 season due to injury. So we're bringing in a guy that has a ton of experience at the D1, ACC level, and had playing time there. And then, seemed to be a key piece for Marshall last season. And he's coming into a spot where he's going to be one of the older guys in the room with how young our linebacker room is. And I think that can, maybe benefit him, even though, yes, spring practice is already over. But if he uses his experience wisely, then as we get into fall camp, you might see him shoot up the depth chart.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I'm not, I don't know a whole lot about him as far as like his leadership capabilities and things like that, because that's another thing that you got to have the athleticism and some of those things just as far as the football IQ, but then you have to have at least some form of leadership capabilities to be a, kind of an outstanding linebacker, if you will. So there's going to be a lot of probably trial and error at that position, at least so far. I mean, it might be a little bit more solidified by the time we get to, conference games, if it takes that long even. But it might be a little bit of a carousel at that position for the first couple of games, just kind of seeing who steps up the most. Because there's not a whole lot of guaranteed, lock starters at that position right now.
That's so true. And then as we keep going down the list here, you got offensive lineman Joe Moore transferring in from Syracuse. He committed on April 29th. He's 6'5", 306. He's a Tennessee native. He's the 4th offensive lineman to transfer to Arkansas this offseason, as some of those other guys that we've talked about that have been here through spring, as Nichols, Fernanda Camarona, Keyshawn Blackstock, a handful of other guys. And then he appeared in 44 games in his career, including his 1 season at Syracuse and 4 seasons at Richmond. He missed most of 2023 with an injury, and he played in 3 games for the Orange. I see him as a guy that can come in, give us some good depth in the trenches, because I think that offensive line is pretty much solidified from what our understanding is from Addison and Talon, for what we've talked to them and how much Addison mentioned that they bonded together and stuff like that. So I think you're going to see him maybe come in and, be a depth guy. He could be a guy that come in and surprise you and maybe get to work his way in the starting lineup. Who knows? I think it depends on performances early in the season. After last season, hopefully that chain's going to be a lot shorter for some of those guys. And if you're not performing, then next man up. I mean, you can't have the same performance you did last year, especially if you're Sam Pittman, and expect to keep your job.
No, 100%. I think that's going to make or break, how well the rest of this offense clicks with a lot of new things going on for some of these plays to develop and for, Talon to have time to read defenses and all the things really do kind of key off of how well that offensive line is able to pass protect and run block. So got to have some improvement. You don't got to be perfect. Just some improvement will help you win more games. I mean, that's really all you can ask for right now. I think it's definitely in the cards for us to have, made some strides forward, especially with all the work that I think's been being put in between Coach Mateos and Coach Pittman directly with the offensive line. I mean, we've heard that straight from Addison Nichols, the center, and there's been multiple other, social media posts of Sam Pittman. Obviously, they're working with those guys one-on-one. There's videos of it, so you can tell that he's taking this one pretty serious. I think he understands the gravity of the situation, if you will, from even just from his job's perspective. I mean, I don't really want anybody to get fired or anything like that at all. But that's in the back of his mind. That like, look, we've got to make some corrections here. Otherwise, this is not going to be a fun path to go down. So I think they're headed in the right direction. How well they can execute when it comes to game time and, free up the offense for Talon to do his thing, some of these running backs to do their thing. And then we've got a really good wide receiver core, in my opinion, especially if you count, some of the tight ends in there. They've got potential to be very explosive. So if they can give Talon a little bit of time back there, I mean, I think this offense does have a lot of potential. We'll see how much of it is realized.
Yeah, that's so true. And as we were talking about, the loss of Snacks Johnson hurts a little bit, but you turn around and bring in a guy from a home state kid, defensive back Anthony Switzer. He's a former Utah State safety. He committed to Arkansas on April 26th. He's a native of Marion, Arkansas. He did begin his career at Arkansas State, where he played 3 seasons before he transferred to Utah State in the 2022 season. This past season, he had 85 tackles, 3 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, 1 interception, and 1 fumble recovery, and 11 starts in 12 games. So another experienced guy that can come in. I'm interested to see the competition in this defense back room because you've got a lot of guys returning from last year, but you've also got a lot of young, talented freshmen and sophomores that maybe didn't get a lot of playing time last year. You lose Al Walcott, now Snacks Johnson, Dwight McGlothern. That's 3 of your guys that got a majority of your snaps last year. And so there's some playing time up for grabs here. And, an experienced guy coming in could benefit, just like we talked about the linebacker position. If he can come in and, use that leadership and really pick up the defense, quickly, he's a guy that could, jump up the depth chart as well.
Yeah, and that's really kind of going to be like what you want out of all these guys that are transferring in late, if you will. I mean, they're behind the 8 ball compared to some of the other guys that are on the roster. Granted, a couple of these names we've tossed out have significant amount of collegiate experience already. So they'll be able to pick things up pretty quickly. A lot of the vernacular is the same from, coaching program to coaching program. So you got to pick up on what the little micro differences are in scheming and vernacular and all that kind of stuff. But overall, these guys are going to be able to pick it up quick and hopefully make an impact quick. That's going to be the goal for sure. So I think it's probably a smart move to go out and target some of these guys that have significant collegiate experience already.
That's so true. And then as we wrap it up here, 2 more guys, linebacker Larry Worth. So another experienced linebacker that Arkansas is bringing into this young linebacking room. He's from Jacksonville State. Committed on April 20th. He's 6'5", 220. He's a Florida native. Will be a junior this year. He played 22 games with 4 starts in 2 seasons at Jacksonville State. He's had 38 tackles, 8 tackles for losses, and 4 sacks in his career. So a guy that can come in and take advantage. It's the same thing over again, like we said about these other 2 guys. If he can take advantage of the situation, use his experience, and kind of outwork, maybe outshine some of these young defensive or linebackers. You never know. I want to see our young linebackers succeed and show what they got, but also I think this just is healthy competition for those guys. And then as we wrap it up here, running back Rodney Hill, former Florida State running back. He committed to Arkansas on April 19th. He took right after his official visit. He's 5'10", 190. He's a sophomore, redshirt sophomore. He had 77 carries for 334 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2 seasons with the Seminoles, and he had 5 catches for 83 yards as well. So this was a little surprising to me to see two guys leave and have one come in. I guess coaching staff for Petrino liked what he saw with this guy, or even the new running backs coach. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I wouldn't expect to see a lot out of him, at least this season anyway. Just the way we've got Jaquan Jackson, Rashad Dominion, Braylon Russell. Those guys are probably going to be your three main carry guys. You may see him come in for – I've heard he's a decently good passing back, so you might see him come in some passing situations. But other than that, I see him kind of being a depth guy as well.
Yeah, 100%. That was exactly my thought whenever I saw them pick him up. Is he's just, kind of filling that depth roster spot, if you will, that Isaiah Augusta or Dominique Johnson probably would have held. Granted, I think those two guys were wanting more playing time than what they were seeing that they were going to get, whereas Rodney Hill probably understands that he's coming in to, kind of ride the pine for a little while and wait his turn, work his way up potentially for next year or something. Or if injuries happen, this year, you got to have that little bit of extra depth there. And he's somebody that can come in and to your point, kind of be that speedy pass catching back that can come in really handy if you got a good one. So, not a bad pickup in my mind. I just don't know where the playing time is going to come for him this season necessarily, unless some crazy things happen, which is possible. But it'll be fun to kind of see what he's able to do if he works his way up the depth chart, kind of being a smaller back compared to the rest of the guys on the roster. So.
Yeah, that's true. And then the fun list we're about to jump over here as we move on from football. Spring practice is completed, so now it's time to it's the break. You're gonna won't hear much news until we get around close to fall camp time. So a couple months, give it late August, and we'll start getting back into football news. But the news that everybody's talking about, and it seems that it's not done yet, is the Arkansas basketball roster is starting to take shape. John Calipari's done some fantastic news in the recruiting, between using the transfer portal along with recruiting his kids that he had essentially committed at Kentucky that decided to follow him. I think that kind of shows that these kids really want to just play for Cal, not necessarily Kentucky. And I think that's big, but we'll talk about the transfer portal first, where you have a big commitment yesterday or 2 days ago that Arkansas received the commitment from John L. Nelly Davis, rated as the number one player in the transfer portal from FAU, was a key piece of the FAU's tournament runs this past year and last year. He's going to be a guy. He's a 6'4", 203-pound guard that can come in and, bring some experience to help along with incoming freshman Boogie Flan. He's a guy that I think his experience will definitely pay benefits to some of these young guys, and support these young guys as we come in and this roster starts to take shape. I think you're going to see a nice combination of talented, experienced guys and talented incoming young freshmen.
Yeah, it's exciting, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but it seems like we're gaining some traction. We talked about it a week or two ago whenever Big Z announced that he was going to transfer, that he was potentially, that first big domino to kind of fall, that we were hoping and expecting that several others would kind of continue after that. And that's exactly what we've seen. Maybe not as fast as some folks out there would like, but I've been pretty impressed actually with who we've contacted. We're being selective, and I think rightfully so. A little bit different strategy than how Musselman went about it, where we'd contact 7,000 guys. But anyways, I like kind of the trajectory that it's going. We're picking up a guy or two here and there. It's kind of slow and steady, and I think there's been some rumors that that's been intentional. Around there's guys that have unofficially committed all at once, and
that
they're
private commit,
yes, private commits, and they're trying to spread out like the official commits to let each of them have their moment to shine in the news rotation, if you will. And I don't really see a problem with that. It's probably a good thing from a fan's perspective to kind of help everybody digest each announcement as they roll along, and that may be a little bit more of a speculation than what's actually happening, but it kind of feels like that might be what's happening. And so there's still some more visits occurring from different players. I know they've reached out to several other players out there, and completely opposite of how Musselman tried to play it all up on his social medias, where he was hyping up every single guy he was contacting and letting the fans know who he was getting a hold of and who was planning to come. you're not hearing as much about that until these guys are on campus and they're like, oh, flat trackers are out there. Some, so-and-so is on campus today. Nobody knew he was coming until today or something, and it's been kind of a fun, surprising type ride so far when it comes to a lot of the transfers. And then even the decommittals from Kentucky, committing to Arkansas, it's kind of felt like they were transferring as well, even though they're not technically transfers. It's kind of how it's felt. So it's made for a pretty fun ride with, I think, quite a bit more to come. They've still got 5 or 6 roster spots that they need to fill with, significant talent. And then you'll have a handful outside of that will kind of be your bench players, if you will. But there's spots for, 3, 4, 5 more guys that could really have instant impact for us. But we're shaping up right now to have a fairly balanced team in my mind. We need to go get some more guards. But I feel like he's done a great job out the gate with the shortened time that he's had to recruit for us at getting the job done, and obviously, utilizing some of his Kentucky recruits as a head start.
Yeah, that's true. Talking about experience that Arkansas brought in, another guy just a few days before Nelly Davis committed, you had Tennessee transfer Jonas Adu commit as well. And I think that's big for Arkansas to bring in leadership like him. He is a key piece of that Tennessee team last year, that he was a key force for them. And I think he's going to be able to bring in a lot of good leadership for this young team that Arkansas is going to have. I've heard, a potential lineup, you could have him play in your 4, even though he's a true 5. And then you have Big Z running your 5, depending on his development, how that looks. So Arkansas has the chance to be a really big team this year. But if they need to, they can also run a small lineup because you've got some of these other guys that, Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, Moogie Flance, some more guard type players that you can, rotate into this lineup. And then, other guys that we've talked about is from Kentucky is you've got Adu Thiero that was just here over the past day or two. Per his Instagram, he was in Fayetteville visiting. He's another guy that is rumored to going to be joining Coach Cal, and that they're pretty confident that his commitment will probably come in the next 24 to 48 hours, give or take. So that's just another experienced guy. I know other guys Arkansas is out there talking to is you've got DJ Wagner that he's kind of choosing between Arkansas and USC. Jordan Burks, a guy that apparently is actually related to Traylon Burks down the line somewhere, that's a Kentucky guy. And so then there's a few more other guys out there that we're talking to in the portal that aren't as big names, but could bring in some good depth. Like we talked about, guys that can come in and sit on the bench and have some, relief whenever we need them to. But, like Seth said, this roster's starting to shape up. It wasn't necessarily as public as what Arkansas fans were used to with Coach Muss, but, Coach Cal's doing his thing, talking to the guys that he wants to, and keeping that down low. And so I'm excited to see what the next few weeks hold as we kind of work on finishing out this roster because before you know it, these guys are going to be heading to campus to start, practicing in summer ball. Most teams do that. Don't know if they'll take any type of trip or plan any type of summer basketball like, Musman had. They took some international trips and things like that. So don't know if any of that's going to occur. None of that's been announced yet. It's been announced Coach Cal's brought in a couple other guys from his coaching staff at Kentucky that will be joining him over here. And it seems like I haven't heard any official news, but he's still on the athletics website. I think it's close enough to safe to say that Ronnie Brewer will be remaining on staff as recruiting coordinator, which I love that. I think that's big to keep on for the state of Arkansas and for some of these in-state talent that Cal wants to come in and, maybe have come to Arkansas and play for him and get to the NBA. And I think you'll start seeing maybe a lot more one and dones with Arkansas with Coach Cal here. That's his type of thing. But I think this season he's kind of
evolving,
if you will. This season he's using that transfer portal more compared to, I think,
he has to.
He has to. He's kind of been forced to do that with, you've got to fill out a 13-team roster that started at 1. And that 1 was not even a scholarship player. So you've got to fill out 13 slots, and you're not going to sign 13 freshmen. So you've got to use the transfer portal, and I think that'll be good for him. as he struggled the past couple years to get out of the first round. And I think you see that maybe because you have those freshmen that hasn't been there, hasn't done that. And you see a lot of these teams that make deep runs in the tournament. They have those experienced guys that's been there, done that. Just look at UConn, even though they are repeat champions, they have experienced players. You look at Purdue, experienced players that have been there. Other teams that made runs. You look at the Tennessee team, they made a run in the tournament. They had experienced players. So I think that's what Cal is maybe learning a little bit, is they can't rely 100% on freshmen because, yes, they're really talented, but they've still got a, jump they've got to make from high school ball, even though you're playing against talented guys, to, you're playing other teams that have guys that have been in college for 2 to 3 years and are more developed in their game and physically.
Yeah, you got to have a little bit of that balance, I think. You look back just at some previous Arkansas teams that had good runs, under Musselman, you look back like Moses Moody's team, for example. You had Jalen Williams, I think, was a freshman then. Obviously, Moses Moody was a one-and-done freshman. You had some definite, experience on that team with transfers like Justin Smith that had, quite a bit of age to him. I'm going to forget quite a few guys that were on
Jalen Tate.
Yeah, Jalen Tate was transferred that had a lot of collegiate experience. There's a handful of others on that team. Actually, a pretty dang good ball club there. There's like 8 or 9 guys that were pretty salty. But it was a perfect balance and meshing of guys like Smith along with guys like Moses Moody and Jalen Williams. That was his freshman year. And they clicked. You had the leadership. You had that freshman talent, but they were able to kind of rein in some of the, not mistakes or anything like that, but just kind of have that gel together that you need to make it far, where you're not making some of the mental errors maybe later down in the postseason that you've seen, some of these Kentucky teams make that were very young. So you think back to a team like that, that's a perfect example of that balance that you got to have. You can have one and dones, and it works out great for. I mean, you think back to the Anthony Black, Jordan Walsh, Nick Smith team. There were some issues there, especially around Nick Smith being out off and on. And I think that caused some chemistry issues later on down the line. But that team had a decent amount of one and done top talent mixed with some veteran talent as well that transferred in. And they had a pretty decent outcome. Could have been worse, could have been better. But you kind of say that for any basketball team that makes it to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. Definitely could be worse, but definitely could have been better, So I think that's where Calipari's got to evolve himself to. And you can already see that he's doing that. He was already doing that at Kentucky, or at least trying to. It's just against his nature, I think, that he's having to really kind of evolve. But this is the perfect force your hand type learning scenario for him, I think, to really achieve good success in that fashion. We're going to have some potential one and done type talent there this year. And then you've got, several transfers that are coming in that are going to be pretty solid, especially that John L. Davis, or however you pronounce his name. That's a big pickup off of somebody that everyone in the country wanted, honestly. And so being able to go out and get some guys like that out of the portal to mix in with your potential one and done freshman talent, that's exactly how you got to do it. If we can keep that up for a couple of years even, and really kind of build this roster each year, man, it'll be a potentially really fun ride with Coach Calipari. It already has been. We hadn't even played a game with him yet.
Yeah, that's very true. I think the hype's already there. I think a lot of people have been talking about the preseason way too early preseason top 25 that they already mentioned Arkansas in there. And that's insane that,
we don't belong in there yet, in my opinion, but I think there's a lot of potential for us to skyrocket up those rankings, I
mean, literally 2 weeks ago, we had 0 players on the roster to now we have, I think the number 4 recruiting class in the country, and then one of the top transfer classes as well. So, I mean, it's been an insane ride over the past 2.5 to 3 weeks for this Arkansas basketball program. And it's been a fun ride, and I can't wait to see as we keep going what it looks like and the more commits we get.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. It's going to be fun. Totally different era. It definitely brings the excitement, and those season ticket prices are going to go up even more.
That's true. A lot more games at my house on the couch.
Yep.
And so shout out to our buddy Caleb over here watching. We appreciate you tuning in. And then as we'll jump over, baseball is in full swing, and Arkansas finishes their midweek with undefeated 10-0 on midweek series. This was their last one this week as we're getting ready to wrap up with 3 final conference series. But, we'll cover this real quick. Gage Wood got his first career start for Arkansas. He's been a guy that's came in and been a closer for Arkansas most of his career. Well, this midweek game, he got the opportunity to step up in there. Ben Bybee pitched over the weekend. So, he's a guy that you usually see start. Colin Fisher has some injury issues that Dave said that he's getting some second opinion on, so we don't know what's going on with him. But Gage Wood came in, got the start, pitched 3 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts in his first career start for Arkansas, where he led us to a 12-7 win over Missouri State, which was also Arkansas's 30th win of the season at Baum-Walker, which is the 5th time in history that we've done that. So, this team is breaking out and shattering all kinds of attendance and, winning records this season. They are 11-0 in midweek games, 30-2 at home on the season, which is incredible. Arkansas also accomplished its 30-win season, its first one since 2021, where they had exactly 30. In 2019, you had 33, and in 2018, you had 34. And this game got started off early and quickly with a bang, where you have your 3 leadoff guys hit singles, and then who else steps up to the plate other than Vahiva Aloy, stepping up for his grand slam, putting up Arkansas 4-0 early in this game with his 11th home run of the game. Peyton Holt came in, added an RBI single. He went 2 for 5 with that RBI on the game. Arkansas scored 4 more runs in the third with RBI hits by Jack Wagner, who went 1 for 4, and Hudson White, who went 1 for 4 with a double and an RBI to open a 9-0 lead at Baum, which by that time, Arkansas fans, even myself, I was thinking, okay, we might actually run rule this game, get finished early, get to go to bed early. Well, Missouri State had other ideas where they would come back and add in 4 runs in the top of the 4th. And then they had 3 more in the 7th, so at that point it's 9-7. You're thinking this is a little bit too close for comfort as an Arkansas fan. Ryder Helfrich came in, added to the Razorbacks' lead with a scoring double, while Sprague had a solo home run in the bottom of the 8th as well. Arkansas's pitching staff combined for 15 strikeouts, led by Gage's 4 strikeouts. Cooper Dawson came in for relief for a third of an inning, had a strikeout. You had Christian Fouch for 2/3 of an inning with 2 strikeouts. Stone Hewlett, 2/3 of an inning with 2 strikeouts. Will McIntyre came in for an inning, 1 strikeout. Fun note about Will McIntyre, he got to pitch against his former high school teammate that they played together at Bryant, and
struck him out.
This one goes to Will McIntyre. I believe in postgame he said, "I got bragging rights for now." So that's fun to see, little things like that. You had Parker Coyle pitch for an inning, allowed 3 runs, 1 strikeout. Gabe Gakel came in the final inning there as this game got a little close. So Dave turned to one of his trusty guys, came in for 1 inning, 2 strikeouts, and then rounded things out here with Jake Faraday for the final inning and 2 strikeouts. So, this was a game that Arkansas started off hot. Missouri State came back a little bit, but Arkansas ended up getting it done. So what's your takes from this game? Gage Woods' first start looked really great. Could be an asset out of the pen as we get into, postseason play.
Yeah, so that was the first thing that really came to my mind, is that Gage Wood is trying to turn himself into kind of the next Will McIntyre potentially, where, earlier on in McIntyre's career, it seemed like he was kind of a closer for us off and on. And then he started doing some more like relief outings and had some starting pitching for us off and on over the last couple of seasons. I think Gage Wood has potential to kind of be that type of pitcher. I don't think he's got the Iron Man knack to him, if you will, where he's going to come out and maybe pitch an entire game like McIntyre did for us. But I think he's showing that he's got it mentally to be able to do whatever you ask of him. Obviously, the tools are all there as far as his stuff, his velo. I mean, he's a great pitcher from that standpoint. But I think being able to kind of come in at any role that you need him to and have success, even if it's not a high leverage situation that he's kind of more accustomed to, he looked great in that starting role, and I think that's a good sign, considering you're going to need new starters next year potentially for a couple of these guys. Gage might be one of them. You know what I'm saying? So seeing that kind of in advance is a good thing. Getting him some of those earlier on reps in advance is a good thing. So I was excited that he even got that opportunity, and I thought he really took advantage of it. And then outside of him, the bullpen did pretty well here. We gave up a couple of big innings, but it wasn't nothing crazy. I think in a bigger scenario, if this had been a regional or something, some of these pitchers might have got pulled a little bit earlier to not allow some of these big innings to happen from Missouri State. But we had such a big lead. I think the mindset was, don't run too many guys out there because you also have a game tomorrow plus a big series upcoming against Kentucky. So, just kind of let these guys work their way in and out of some of these innings if they have to. And I think this is exactly what they did. And it worked out just fine for us, especially because the offense exploded early in this one and gave you a little bit of that comfort insurance, if you will. Thought Vahiva Aloy played great. These two games, Peyton Stovall really played well in. We can talk a little bit more about that in a second for him, but he looked great. A couple other guys had some up and down, plays here and there. I thought Peyton Holt had a really good 2-game series against Missouri State as well. So him and Stovall have kind of been continuing their hot streaks. And then Vahiva Aloy, he's going to get his. He'll have a game where maybe he goes 0 for 4, but then the next game he goes 3 for 4. And so he's doing Vahiva Aloy things. Man, he's been really fun to watch. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but he has really locked down that shortstop position. He's not making the errors that he was earlier in the season. You can tell he is the most comfortable he's been so far this season out there, just from a fielding perspective. And I think that's bled over into his approaches at the plate, where he's not chasing those sliders down in a way like he was. Like, he's really locked in mentally on both sides of the ball. And that's what you got to have, to win championships. But it's been fun to watch his progression. We've talked about it before, but it seems like he just keeps making those little incremental improvements week in and week out. And he has been very, very efficient and smooth out there, fielding his position at shortstop.
Yeah, that's true. I think, with what we've seen him do this year, the way he started, you wouldn't think you would see this, but he's been in some clutch situations, which is fantastic to see. And he keeps increasing that hitting percentage and that average. You got to love that. But like you said, the way that Holt has been playing, I don't see how you can take him out of the lineup right now.
No, not at all.
I love the defensive play from Wilmsmeyer, but you add a guy like Peyton Holt that has maybe not the full speed that Wilmsmeyer does, but as we've seen in the Florida series, can play the outfield just as good, and also brings a nice hot bat at a time that Arkansas really needs it. And as we jump over to game 2 here, Arkansas got the win 8-5, where you saw a lot less pitchers in this game. Ben Bybee got the start here. We just mentioned he got that start in the Florida series last week. He comes in and gets the start here, goes 4 innings, allows 3 hits, 6 strikeouts, and 57 pitches. You bring in Dylan Carter for 2 1/3 inning, 3 hits, 2 runs with 1 strikeout on 35 pitches. And then Cody Frank comes in and finishes things off in the final 2 2/3. He's the guy that they brought in, and you had to ride him. You got to let him get kind of back into his thing. And one thing that I did notice that threw me off significantly is he shaved the stash. I hate to see it go because he was rocking one really nice stash, but maybe, hey, he was just like, it's time for a change. Things aren't going my way.
Man. Yeah. Change something. See if I can get out of the funk I'm in.
No kidding. So he went 2 2/3, 2 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts on 41 pitches. So not a terrible outing, but also not the greatest either. I think it's just going to be one of those processes. He's got to work through it. And even though some of that little superstitious stuff, that can be big for players mentally as they work things through like that. So with this win here, Arkansas is 12-0 in its midweek games to finish unbeaten in midweek contests for the first time since 2005, which was Dave Van Horn's 3rd season as the Arkansas head coach. So that's got to be good for him. Like we said, Ben Bybee made his 6th career start, 4 scoreless frames, career high 6 strikeouts. I think he's he's turning into a guy that you could see much needed in, postseason for, you're going to be playing a lot of days in a row, and maybe you want him to start. He's a guy that he's shown he can come in and do that. He is a junior, threw 37 out of 58 pitches, 4 strikes, only allowed 3 hits and no walks. So fantastic job there by Ben as he keeps improving. Arkansas got their first lead of the game in the third, where they scored on a 2-out fielding error to open an early 1-0 advantage. Missouri State then tied the game up with a solo home run in the 5th. So not as much scoring as that first game. In the bottom half of the 5th, Arkansas goes back up 3-1, and then they poured it on in the 6th and 7th innings as Peyton Hull got things started with a solo shot in the 6th, which put Arkansas up 4-1. He finished 1 for 3 with an RBI and a walk to raise his slash line to 333, 441, and 455 with 3 homers and 15 RBIs on the season. Stovall continued to do Stovall things, as
Stove's hot, baby.
No kidding. He added an RBI single to stretch the Hawgs' advantage to 4. The team's tri-captain, who he finished 5 for 5 with all singles with an RBI, recorded his first 5 hit games since June of 2022 in Omaha, where it was in the College World Series. So his bat has continued to stay hot, and I think this is just the season that we expected for him. He had that shoulder surgery last year, came back strong, was prepped to open the season with a big year, had that foot injury. We didn't get to see him until the Missouri series, and then he stepped out there and didn't look like he missed a beat. He came out there and putting together, I think, one of his better seasons as a Razorback, which this is what we knew he could do once he got healthy. He's now slashing for a team leading 350, 419, 562 with 7 home runs and 31 RBIs. Like we said, he's on a tear, and I don't think he's going to be slowing down anytime soon. Another guy that had a surprisingly good game, Parker Rowland. He finished 2 for 2 with 3 runs, a double, an RBI, and a walk. And he also stole his first career base for college in this game. It cracked me up. The announcers were talking about that lightning speed he's got on the base pads. But it was nice to see Parker Rowland have success there.
He actually had a really good game defensively too.
Yeah, that is true. He had the Hawgs' only other multi-hit game. And for this game, you had 5 Arkansas batters that had 1 RBI. Nolan Souza had a 2 RBI hit. And then we talked about Dylan Carter. It's good to see him back. A little up and down game for him, but I think he's working his way back still. I think he'll come in a clutch situation, as we need him. We keep seeing postseason. Arkansas is going to be in postseason. It just is a matter of what seed we're at. I feel pretty confident saying that we'll probably be hosting. As the projections came out today, they had Arkansas as the number 2 overall seed, which I'd like to stay. That's the high as I want to go. You can just drop it right there, and we'll take that. They had our regional being Kansas State, Oregon, and Little Rock. So a team we've already seen. So that I would take that regional in a heartbeat, and I think it's going to be big. And talking about big, Arkansas has a big series this weekend on the road as they head to Lexington, Kentucky for a 3-game SEC series with Kentucky. And this has the potential to have some regular season conference title contention there, as both these teams are red hot right now. Both teams are having really success. To me, I think it's Kentucky, I think, to me, has surprised everyone. I don't know if they were necessarily projected to be this good and contending for an SEC title, but the way they've came out has just been insane. Arkansas has won back-to-back SEC series. They took 2 of 3 against Florida. They've been really good at home, but we're only 5-4 in games away from Fayetteville. So that's where it kind of gets a little hairy, if you will. Kentucky, when you talk about them, they had a hot season, but they've kind of
cooled off a little lately.
Yeah, they cooled off a little bit of speed bump with, in the recent weeks in SEC. They dropped from 14-1 to 16-5 after they lost the series to Tennessee and South Carolina. However, they are still in position to host a 4th regional in program history. So congrats to them. But hopefully, Arkansas can come in. I think we've said it before. I don't think a lot of these teams are going to see the level of pitching, especially when you face Hagen Smith. He's easily one of the top guys in the country. I saw it today, a guy that easily should be contending for Golden Spikes Award with the way he's pitching right now. However, you talk about Kentucky, they're a team that they love to run the base pads, try to steal those bases. So whether it be White or Helfrich or even Rowland, if they get any time behind the plate this week, they're going to have to be lightning quick and reactive, as Kentucky ranks first in the SEC and 16th in the country with 92 stolen bases. Petrie leads their team with 20, and 8 different Wildcats have stolen at least 5 bases. So they're guys that they're not afraid to run those base pads. So we're going to have those on-target throws to second and be able to hopefully turn some double plays if they like to steal a lot. Arkansas has been caught stealing 28.1%, which ranks 10th in the league. However, that number is a little bit higher than you think due to Ryder Helfrich, who's 5 of 11 defending stolen bases. All other catchers are 4 for 25. So you talk about a guy, maybe Helfrich gets more playing this time this weekend since he's good behind the plate about, catching runners stealing compared to everybody else that hasn't done well this season.
Yeah, I could see that. And it seems like his bat's been slowly getting a little bit better. His average isn't that great on the season, but he's had some clutch hits for us. You think back to the Auburn series where he hit that, not a walk-off homer, but that top of the 10th home run that ended up being the go-ahead, run for us. So he's shown that he can have those clutch hits. He's slowly kind of worked his average up a little from where he had dropped to, but would like to see, obviously, some more improvement on the batting side of things for him. But he does bring a lot of stability behind the plate, considering he's a true freshman. Very, very good player. He's got great blocking ability back there. And then, as you already stated, he's probably our best defensive catcher as far as catching guys stealing. So, how does this chess matchup happen as far as you try to plug in some defense for offense or vice versa, especially if you're, maybe playing the Peyton Holt card in center field, subbing some offense for defense there? Do you do the opposite at the catcher position? Who knows, man? I mean, it's nice to have enough players on your roster where you have that luxury of being able to kind of pick and choose depending on the way the matchups shake out. This is a prime scenario of, I think, a tough decision that'll be had, considering Hudson White's gotten the majority of like the SEC starts, if you will. But Helfrich's really shown that he can step up and compete in the big boy competition, so we'll see. Who knows? Might do a little bit of split time out there, let White start a couple innings, and if they start trying to run all over him, maybe make a substitution. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. One thing to note that Arkansas, even though this Kentucky team loves to get on base and run, the Arkansas pitching staff, we know how talented they are. They lead the country with an on-base percentage allowed of .299. So you're not getting on base much against this Arkansas team, and I think that bodes well for Arkansas. And then as you flip over to Kentucky, some players you want to watch for Kentucky. They, like we mentioned, they love to steal the base pads, but they also have a tendency to play some small ball and hit for high averages. You've got Nick Lopez that hits 371, Ryan Waldschmidt that hits 370. Their batting averages are pretty high inside the top 10 of the SEC. They both scored more than 40 runs. Waldschmidt is a threat on the bases. He has 18 steals. These guys normally hit near the top of the Kentucky order. Their biggest threat that you want to watch is down in the order. Ryan Nicholson hit sixth in all 3 of his Wildcats games against South Carolina last weekend. And the first baseman leads their team with 14 home runs, 42 RBIs, and Petrie's right behind him with 41 RBIs. So they've got some threats on the bats, but again, they're going up against an impressive Arkansas pitching staff and Hagen Smith, Brady Tiger. Mason Molina will be back this weekend. Dave said he could have probably played last weekend, but just wanted to keep him healthy, which I appreciate that, especially with this big series on the horizon there. Like Seth said, yes, that's going to be big. We kind of not necessarily missed Molina last week, but we had to really piece together that last game, which ultimately resulted in a loss. You can what if and say, well, if Molina would have been in the game and started, that we might have swept. But, we pieced it together. We showed that we had some depth in the bullpen, even though it didn't necessarily go our way. You can thank really one guy for that, Jack Caglione, a guy that Dave said after the game he really thought about walking him when he hit that grand slam. And that's a time where if we face Florida again, I don't think Dave makes that mistake again. He gets walked every time. So,
yep. No matter if the base is loaded or not, you walk him. Heck, even if bases are empty, you still might walk him. I don't even give him a chance to hit a 1-run home run.
Don't let him get any momentum going.
Nope.
And then as you flip over the pitching staff for Kentucky, they're led by Trey Poser, who took over as their number one during the second conference series and hasn't looked back. He's 6'4", he's 3-0 with a 3.75 ERA. He has 48 strikeouts in 48 innings. And it has yet to be determined whether he will play his normal role and face Ace Hagen Smith. As we've seen other Arkansas opponents, they don't throw their ace against Hagen just because, for the most part, those games that Hagen pitches, Arkansas is going to win those games. So why use up your ace in a game that you might not necessarily go your way?
Yeah, it's a good strategy. It kind of sucks that we're missing out on some of those like ace on ace matchups. There's still been some really tight ball games that Hagen's thrown in. We've had a couple of different 2-1 wins that he's gotten us, even against the team's non-ace, just because we've struggled with the bats a time or two. But there's a reason other teams choose not to throw their ace against Hagen, is because it's just tough sledding.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, as a given, like Seth said, why waste an ace, even though it'd be great for a matchup, when the likelihood of you winning a game is not that high? As far as the rest of the rotation, it consists of Dominic Neiman, who is 7-3 on the season with a 5.0 ERA, Mason Moore, who is 7-1 on the season with a 5.08. Both pitchers, they do have decent records, but between the two, they've given up 24 earned runs in their last 4 starts. And then their best bullpen guy is Johnny Hummel, who's 2-0 with a 2.45. He leads their team with 5 saves and an average of 1.45 strikeouts per inning. So a good bullpen guy, a couple guys that allow runs in these past few games. At the end of the day, what are you going to say? Does Arkansas sweep? Do they go win the series 2-1? What do you think is the result of this weekend?
Well, it's nice to have Hagen kind of get us off on the right footing each weekend. So I would expect that to be a win for sure. It really does depend on, how well can our bats that, seem like they've maybe heated up a little bit in the Missouri State series. Can we keep that translated over into the SEC competition where the pitching is obviously better? That's half the battle all year. You'll blow up a midweek team and then score 2 runs on your next game against the SEC opponent. So are we able to kind of translate that over and score a few more runs than we traditionally have in some of these opening night games? That'll be kind of big in my mind to set the tone for the rest of the series. Whether we win it 2-1 or 1-0 or something like that or not, I'd expect us to win game 1, hopefully with a fairly decent margin to kind of carry that momentum over into the rest of the games. I don't see us sweeping. I don't. I think Kentucky's too good to. We already mentioned it. They have dropped to, I believe, number 8 in the polls now after the previous 2 weekends that they've had, where at one point they were all the way up to like number 3 or 4. But I wouldn't really say they're scuffling. I think they've just ran into some good teams finally, if you will. They've beat some good teams and even swept some good teams, but then, Tennessee was a little bit of a buzzsaw for them. And then South Carolina is a team that, in my opinion, I felt like we were lucky to get out of South Carolina with a series win. So South Carolina is a really good ball club that's got some, star power on that team that was able to kind of knock off Kentucky, right after they'd lost to Tennessee. So on the one hand, they show that they're beatable. They're starting to get, a little bit of the scouting reports out on them on the ways to kind of beat them, if you will, and who to pitch around, who to only throw sliders to, those types of situations. So I think that bodes well for us. Being able, even though it's on the road, being able to go, steal this series. However, I don't think we'll sweep. I think they're too good. I think they are going to find a way to squeak a game against us. I'd love to. Worst case scenario, we would lose this series 2-1. If for some reason game 2 and 3, just they hit the cover off the ball on us and get into our bullpen early. Things could go south in a hurry because this Kentucky team is that good. It's definitely going to be different than like the Missouri series or something, for example. So I think it's going to be a tough challenge for us, especially with it being on the road. I think it's a good series for us to kind of get a little bit of a taste of, what A&M is going to look like here in 2 weekends after this one, because that's also on the road against a team that's similar to Kentucky that scores a lot of runs, but I think they're, even better than Kentucky. So it'll be a good gear up type of a series for us to look forward 2 weeks to that A&M series. Don't want to overlook Mississippi State at home. I do think that's a very winnable series for us, though. So all in all, if Hagan sets the tone and we can keep the bats pretty hot, especially between Stovall, Peyton Holt, Vahiva Aloy, I expect Nolan Souza to get a decent amount of playing time. He's been hitting really well. He didn't play as much in the midweek games, with a couple of other guys getting some more playing time just for rotational purposes and rest purposes. But there's 4 or 5 guys right there. I didn't even mention Ben McLaughlin. He hadn't been hitting as well just over the last few games, but he's still leading the team in on-base percentage. There's a reason he's in that lineup. He's got a lot of pop. Any given day he'll go 3 for 3 and have 2 walks to go along with that. So if those 4, 5, 6 guys right there that I just named off can really kind of keep things rolling, we got a great shot at beating Kentucky easily.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a good series, and I think I'm along the lines with you. I don't think we sweep because I think
Kentucky's too good. I think
they're too good to sweep. I mean, and at the end of the day, if we can just get out there with a series win, that'll be big. And it's like I said before, I don't necessarily want us to purposely lose, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either if we drop this series or either win this series and drop the A&M series. I'd rather beat A&M and maybe drop this one. But at the end of the day, that probably keeps us from hitting that number 1 overall seed that you don't want because of the curse that goes along with it. No number 1 seed has ever won.
Curses are meant to be broken.
Hey, if that's the case, more power to you. Let us get that number 1 seed then.
I'd still prefer not to, though. I'm with you, man. I completely agree.
But so you've got some exciting matchups. Arkansas's last home series will be next weekend against Mississippi State coming to town. And then we end the season on the road at A&M before we head to Hoover for the SEC tournament. And so I think it's going to be a good, exciting weekend for Arkansas baseball. So get out there, watch it, catch it on, wherever you want to go. And as we flip over to our other Diamond team, the softball team took a trip down to Central Arkansas yesterday as well, or on Tuesday, I believe, and got the win against UCA 8-0. This was supposed to be a home-and-home series, but the game in Fayetteville got canceled due to the weather early in the season, so it was just a one game, and Arkansas went down and took care of business on the road where we struggled with UCA last year, and I think they were like, that's not going to happen this year. Robin Herring came out for sure. And Robin Herring came out and had a fantastic game, 8-0, so it was a shorter game. Went for all the 6 innings, only allowed 2 hits, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, 87 pitches, so that's nothing for, a softball pitcher. Had a fantastic outing there. And then you look at this, Arkansas got their bats pretty hot in this game. Arkansas had its 8th run rule victory of the season where they out-hit UCA, who are dubbed the Sugar Bears instead of the Lady Bears. It's weird to me, but they out-hit the Sugar Bears 9-2, highlighted by freshman Kennedy Miller, who got things started going 1 for 2, having a team-high 3 RBIs, 2 walks, including her 7th home run of the season, which was a 2-run homer in the 6th. You had Callie Halverson come in with her 9th multi-RBI game after collecting 2. Halverson finishes the game 1 for 2 with that RBI and a sac fly. Reagan Johnson has her 20th multi-hit game for Arkansas, going 2 for 3, along with an RBI and a walk. Nia Carter tied her season high for hits for her 3rd time this season, going 3 for 4 at the plate in a DP role. So their designated hitter, Hannah Camden, went 2 for 4 with a pair of infield singles. Bree Ellis took a bases-loaded hit by pitch, and Lauren Kimson took a bases-loaded walk and drove in 2 runs. So this was a great game for Arkansas as they were up 6-0 in the 4th. due to Halverson's RBI single, and entering that run rule territory where they were getting close, you had Kennedy Miller have that 2-run home run that cleared the left field wall, put Arkansas up 8-0, and sent them home early.
Yep, can't ask for anything better because that UCA team's not bad at all. They were a buzzsaw last year with a lot of seniors that were really good, but they're still a good ball club. So it's good to go down there and, like you said, take care of business. Not even a contest, honestly. Just shows that we weren't overlooking this game like maybe we were last year. So it's a good thing to see that they have that level of attention to detail to, really focus in even on the midweek games against non-conference opponents. It keeps you hot, if you will, for those SEC series that we've been doing a great job knocking some big teams off lately.
Yeah, it's very true. So Arkansas softball will come back to Bogle Park and finish with their last home SEC series, last SEC series of the season before they head to Auburn, Alabama for the SEC tournament on May 7th. They have Ole Miss coming to town, where we've already had some changes as they've made tomorrow's games a doubleheader due to some weather in Fayetteville. So you have first game 3:30, and then the sequential game will start it's usually 45 to an hour after that first game concludes. It's going to be a good weekend. Arkansas needs to finish the season off hot here. Arkansas leads the all-time series 41-31. Hawgs are 22-12 versus the Rebels in Fayetteville, and 17-17 on the road. Under Coach Deifel, Arkansas is 10-6 versus Ole Miss, including 6-0 at home. The last time out, Arkansas defeated Ole Miss 3-0 on May 12th in the SEC tournament. The Razorbacks have shut out Ole Miss in their last two meetings, and Arkansas brings a 3-game win streak versus Ole Miss into this weekend dating back to last season. They did not play in 2023. Arkansas has swept Ole Miss in each of its last two series in Fayetteville, being 2021 and 2018. Arkansas has won the last two series versus the Rebels as well. And Arkansas has won 7 of their last 10 games against the Rebels. So, a series win for Arkansas, if you get the series win, you have 3 straight series wins against Ole Miss. You clinch Arkansas's 3rd consecutive series win against the Rebels in Fayetteville. You have the Hogs have their 6th SEC series win in a row, and it would be Arkansas's 3rd straight home series. So, as we just mentioned, Arkansas run ruled UCA on Tuesday 8-0 in 6 innings. You had the fantastic outing by Robin Herron. Kennedy Miller keeps improving. So, big game this weekend. Get out there and, support these girls as it's your last time to catch them at home in the regular season. Postseason is right here. We have the SEC tournament, and then I feel comfortable saying that we'll probably host a regional for softball. It'll be a great final series. So if you're in town, you'll get out there at that doubleheader tomorrow, catch a game on Saturday if you get the chance. But you don't want to miss out on your last potential chance to see this Arkansas softball team at Bogle for the regular season.
No, not at all. And this has got potential to be a really explosive matchup for us. I think we're substantially better than Ole Miss. I think the trends will continue, if you will. So we've got a pretty good shot at closing things out on the right note for the regular season. And it'll make for fun games to watch if there's a lot of explosive offense on our side of the ball for sure. So go out there, support these girls. They've done big things this year, and they deserve all the support that they've gotten.
100%, I agree. You couldn't have said it better myself. So with that being said, we'll wrap up here. But, don't forget we've been, pushing out there. If you can get out there and show up May 18th at Core Brewing, be on the lookout there. We're going to get a Facebook event created soon. But, if you didn't get to get out there last time, it was a great time. Great turnout. They have a lot of good home brews there at Core, along with all their Scarlet Letter seltzers. Great environment. You can bring your dog friendly. They have a little dog park out back. Come join us May 18th, 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be doing our recap show. We're doing some final logistics, but there's a good chance we'll have a guest with us to talk some Arkansas baseball. It'll be a familiar name for you Arkansas baseball fans. I won't reveal it yet, but once we get confirmation, I'll let you guys know. But it should be a good time. Get out there, come support us, Core, local brewery, local business. It'll be a great time. So with that, we'll jump out of here, and we will be back on Sunday or Monday to do our Razor recap show. Hopefully, talking about a series win for both Arkansas softball and baseball. And then until then, we'll see you next time.